Welcome to Season 3 of Voices of the Goddess podcast, where we empower, inspire, and uplift women to be the goddesses they truly are. I'm your co-host, Julietta, the magical PT, owner and founder of Body and Soul PT, as well as Soul Candy, intuitive, handmade, and one-of-a-kind jewelry and artwork. I support people in finding the magic within themselves, creating balance in their body and soul.
And I'm your other co-host, Graciela, published, award-winning, and professionally certified portrait photographer specializing in boudoir and personal branding. I create portraits of who you are and not just what you look like so that you can become who you've always been. Join us each week as we sit down for a heart-to-heart chat, sharing stories and insights with listeners across the globe. Laughter and tears alike abound as we access ancient wisdom in modern times through unique and exciting storytelling, supporting you on your life's journey. Welcome to the circle and enjoy the show.
We are live, Graciela. Hello, welcome everybody.
Hello. It's been a while.
Yes, it has. Although out in there in the podcast world, it doesn't seem like it because we just dropped a new episode yesterday.
Although I'm telling you, sometimes a week feels like a lifetime. A lot can happen in that amount of time.
Last week felt like a lifetime. It was crazy.
Absolutely.
But
you know, this is our, fifth episode together, I think. And I kind of got to thinking about it because, you know, I've been introducing the podcast to just, you know, my clients and things like that. They're all starting to, tell me about the podcast, right? So I was excited to talk to them about it. And they keep asking me, like, is it voice of the goddesses or voices of the goddess? Like, what is it exactly? And I'm like, voices of the goddess. So I figured if they had, you know, if they wanted to hear it, I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit, like, because I know you and Allison put that together years ago and it's so genius. I love it. Tell us a little bit like the story behind it, because I want to hear that part again.
Well, I'll even give more backstory because originally we wanted to call it Wonder Women.
Oh,
women as in plural. But speaking to some attorneys, they were like, you probably don't want to go there. Like, right. I get how you're saying it's different, and that is a huge trademark to go up against. So we scratched that off the list. But I think even if you go back, like if you look at some of our first episodes, you might see the Wonder Women thing on there. So anyway, we went back to the drawing board and, you know, so we got around voice and goddess and putting it together, and how we chose voices, plural, of the goddess, singular, is that we are many and we each have our own voice. So that's why it's voices, because that is each of us. But we are all one. And so that's why we went with goddess, singular.
There you go.
So the many voices of the one.
Yes, I love that. And, you know, it's interesting because even across all cultures and all ages and all geographic areas, like the same messages come through, right? Like women feel empowered in similar ways in different cultures. Of course, there's differences, right? Some women feel empowered by different things, but a smile is a smile, a laugh is a laugh, you know, love is love, right? That doesn't necessarily need a particular culture to go with it. So I love that it's not just like the American voices of the goddess, right? It's not like the Florida voices of the goddess. It is like global, universal, if you will, voices of the goddess, right?
Correct.
I love that so much. I'm so glad to be here.
I'll bring up a little interesting thing too, just because it has come up. I need people to understand that this in no way reflects on anything religious worship. You know, we're not worshiping the goddess, but we're all, you know, looking at each other as empowered, intelligent, compassionate. Like, we are everything. We are all that a woman should be. And that is the goddess, not a deity to be worshipped.
Right, so, exactly. And it's not, you know, it's, I mean, for as much as it is about women per se, for me personally, the messages are genderless, truly, you know, like we're women, and, you know, we love and support and empower and inspire women. But the messages here really, I think, are truly universal. I know that I take them home to my family, you know, my partner, my daughter, my son, you know, all of our children. Like, it really is for everybody. So as much as, you know, it needs a name, right? It can't just be like, hey, this is the podcast for everyone in the whole wide world. That'd be too long of a name. Talk about copyright. But right, I do think that, you know, Voices of the Goddess, it is not mutually exclusive from any particular, like, any belief system truly is irrelevant, because again, in any belief system, a smile is still a smile, joy is still joy, right? Connection is still connection. So I think it's such a great big open umbrella, right? Or should I say like a big embrace, right?
Yes. So we have a guest, and I'm hoping this is working out because I see she's on, but I can't see her face, and it looks like she's muted. But we're going to try and bring her on, and hopefully the magic of technology comes through for us.
Perfect. We're thrill seekers. We can do anything.
Paula, are you here to join us?
Paula has some amazing stories, I understand. I'm very excited about this.
Well, while we're waiting, and hopefully she's getting on, I don't know what's going on over there. I'll just tell a little backstory, because Paula and my background together is very goddess-like. We actually met in Egypt. She was on the tour that I went with last November. And
which was your second trip, right?
That was my second trip there. The funny thing was, on the first trip, they told me, if you drink the water from the Nile, you will come back to Egypt. And I was like, I ain't drinking out of that river.
That's what
and they look at me as I'm sipping water out of my bottle, and they think, where do you think the bottled water comes from in Egypt? I'm like, oh my, you guys are very tricky there.
Wow.
So of course I've been back. It looks like Paula is here. Let's bring her on. Hello.
Hi, Paula.
Hello. Hi. Oh my goodness. I am so happy to be here with you. I'm having a little journey of the internet today. Hello, goddesses. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Every episode we pray to the technology gods and hope that everything works out all right. But we're so glad you're here. And will you please take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience? Let them know what you want them to know about you.
Thank you, Julietta. My name is Paula Reardon-Webster, for those of you who can't read. And I am a mindfulness teacher, coach, facilitator, and I'm adding spiritual coaching and transition coaching to my repertoire. I also teach Qigong, Tai Chi, and yoga, other mind-body movement, and I'm a recovering CPA and a healthcare finance professional. But most of all, I'm just a woman trying to figure it all out, leading the way with others.
I love that. We have a lot of guests that are recovering, whatever that title was before. And, you know, one thing that I hope that this show does is help younger women realize at a younger age that it's okay to make the choices that are right for you, and not, you know, because so many people you start in a career that you think you should be doing, as opposed to the career that fills your heart and soul and brings joy into your life. And there's a lot of people that just go through doing that career, just like waiting for retirement. So I love when women and men, when anyone can recognize, like, this doesn't fill my soul, this isn't my life purpose, and allows themselves to change paths and pick the one that does fill their soul.
It's really an evolution, right? I mean, because like for me personally, I know that, you know, when I started out in a particular field, it served me really well for the time period that I was there, right? Kind of just like my first marriage. It served me really well during the time that I was there. And then when I transitioned out of that and I transitioned into something else, my life became exponentially better, you know? you're right. So many people say we're recovering this, that, and the other. And I know that there's a transition phase, but I would love for everyone to evolve in a way that leaves you feeling good and happy with the time that you spent doing what you did. Do you know what I mean? Like no regrets, like, okay, I spent 20 years doing XYZ. I'm ready to move on. But, these are all the great things that I took out of it, But it sounds like you're really enjoying yourself now, Paula.
I am. And by the way, so nice to meet you. I feel like I know you from your podcast life here. I am. And I think, what you just said is so germane to all of our lives, where people find themselves, there's a journey of this is where I think I'm going. This is what I'm trained in. There's this thing about money, right? Sometimes we need more money than we can get in some of the more soulful or spiritual or helping professions. And using all of those steps along the way as fodder for who you were becoming for the next leg of the journey.
Paula, I understand you've been doing this for a really long time, right?
Well, and not compared to some people, but for myself, I've been in, let me see, back in 2013, I started teaching mindfulness. So I've had a practice off and on. I went back to grad school. I had dropped out of an MBA program because that just seemed so extra to me when I was a young aspiring CPA who partied all the time. That cut into my weekend warrior stuff. So yeah, so that's sort of like the line of demarcation where it became much more of a vocation and aspiration, a heartful way of, working in the world at that point.
I bring it up because one of my great passions is reading. So I wanted to ask you our first question, which is, what is a book that you wish every goddess would read and why? Your varied history. I hope it's not one of those math books because that I can't handle. But tell me what book you wish every goddess would read?
Well, yeah, Graziella and Julietta, it is not the Journal of Accountancy. I will say that. Although, how many sleepless nights have I had or friends have talked about that I wished I'd saved those damn journals of accountancy, put you right to sleep. So for those of you who've ever listened to a podcast, this question was sent out ahead of time, which left me scratching my head. Which book? What's, the inner critic was like, what's the right book? And so I'm going with 3 books, and I'll just say this quickly. Wayne Dyer, Wishes Fulfilled. I would hold up a copy. I actually think I lent it to someone, which was not like me with a favorite book like that. But I think the inner critic, or the part of us that's always pushing, right? The Western part of us that's like type A, and when we there's a lot of pop psychology and messaging out there, and I just love the beautiful spiritual way he wraps ourselves around. Be careful what we say to ourselves. Be very loving. And I love the prayer of St. Francis is a big part of that. Make me a channel of thy peace. The way of the Tao, which is part of Qigong and Tai Chi practice. Just the Tao, is all things. It's the universal spirit. Wrapping that into our life, knowing there's a universe, a spirit that has our backs. That's a hard one to digest when you just had fill in the blanks, whatever catastrophe. And, the essence of the words I am. So that's one. Anne Morrow Lindbergh, Gifts from the Sea, which I dug out and I was thinking, that's from when I became a mother, right? No, I remember I was thinking about it when I was, working a lot, single, trying to figure it all out. Her idea that you actually do nothing is doing something, that, I began these pages for myself in order to think out my own particular pattern of living.
And what a powerful message that is. I'm constantly telling Julietta, I need to stop, but I don't know how.
Exactly.
Doing nothing is doing something. Very powerful.
Exactly. And just knowing that is, it's all for the good of our soul, our spirit, our body, right? Our body.
I think we've been also programmed, conditioned to think that it's wrong to do nothing. And everyone needs to know that it's okay to do nothing, and it's vital to our health and well-being to sometimes do nothing.
I think a lot about how this country was put together, like the Wild West and settling. And, I just watched that 1883 series, and you see all these, folks going west, and they're going through like Arizona and Texas and all these brutal lands. And it's like, there was no time to do nothing, because if you did nothing, you would die, right? Without food, without water, you literally had to fight every waking minute of your day. And I kind of feel like telling everybody, like, hey, it's okay now. Like, we're okay, right? Like, we don't have to still be at this super high, crazy, go get it all the time level. Like, take a little time to reflect, right? That's when the magic comes in. Beautiful.
So true. It's so true. And just take a little neuroscience sidestep with mindfulness that, we train our amygdala to be in fight or flight all the time. We're not out in the Wild West. The bears, well, maybe the bears are at our door more than they used to be, but like, we're not fighting off the tigers. And, but our mind is if we had something bad happen, we take it to bed with us, we get up with it in the morning, and I call you up and say, you're not going to believe what happened to me. And I'll just keep recreating that fight or flight response. It's not helping.
Not at all.
So if you don't mind, I'll throw in a third book, and that is not new, I've been studying her, but I've been in a coaching program with Marianne Williams in the past year, and The Age of Miracles, which spoke to me when I was a little bit younger, and now I'm not younger. And I just love, I was reading the back cover, sometimes what we appear to have lost, I think is something we were alluding to, is simply something it was time to leave behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so much wisdom in there about being on a spiritual path, and, how the journey may not be easy, but how worthwhile it is. And as we progress along the journey, it's not really that we're losing things, but we're taking those nuggets of wisdom with us in service of others.
Great books. And I love when this happens. I mean, not only did you bring a book that has not been brought up before, you brought up 3 books that have not been brought up before, which is amazing, given how many episodes we've had.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing those to the attention of our audience. And we're going to move on to the next thing we want to know is, what is one piece of advice you learned from a woman that changed your life?
So hard. I will say that the first thing that came to mind is, sadly, when I was in a bit of trauma about my marriage, we separated. And I was, really anxious and depressed and not knowing how to conduct myself, so disorienting. And I had kids that they weren't young, they were middle school, high school. But my closest friend said, no matter what you do in your life, no matter where you've been, no matter what degrees you accumulate, no matter what jobs you've had, if you do the right thing by your kids, when you look back, you'll feel good about your life. And so that was kind of my marching orders, how to conduct myself during that time, because I wanted to be, I'm not really a great, crazy, screaming Mimi type, but, I didn't want it to define how I lived my daily life. And so I feel like that applies just as much to anyone who maybe didn't have children, or, may not even have had a lifelong partner of sorts, that, looking more towards not the well-being of others, but how there's this favorite Dharma teacher of mine who wrote a book, and it says, chapter 5, I take care of myself, I heal the world. So, really not creating more messes out there, and creating myself in a way, conducting myself and creating myself in a way that people could look toward me just as I look toward others, as, that's a woman of dignity and grace.
Beautiful. I always say that the better you treat yourself, the more it allows other women to treat themselves well as well, right? Like, the more the better you are aligned with yourself and more authentic, the more it allows other women to do the same, and I think we notice that in our own lives. It might be as easy. My latest excursion was getting a very specific manicure, and I was like, oh, she has a white nail polish, I'll get white nail polish. And I know that sounds like so ridiculous, but it really has made a difference in my life, because I'm like, wow, I did something for me, and it's literally only for me. Like sometimes, how sometimes you do things that's for you, but it's for your family, right? Like a new house or a new car or whatever it is. It's really for everyone else. But this nail polish is mine, girlfriend. Nobody can take that away from me. That's mine. So with all of the experiences that you have, I'm curious, give us like one of your really good success stories. I know your coaching business has touched a ton of people. What's a great success story that keeps you inspired to continue doing what you're doing?
Okay, well, I would say going back to when I started teaching mindfulness, which I just felt compelled because I had really felt the experience of committed practice changing my life, my neurobiology through some rocky roads I was walking. And there's a couple of things about that. One was a woman who was in either my first or second classes, and it was a community class locally. And she was talking about, you always ask people, have you practiced before? Is this a refresher? Are you here to teach me? Because you are. But and this woman was a researcher at Mass General Hospital and had been involved in a group there with this woman, Sarah Lazar, who was in the foundational neuroscience studies of mindfulness way back. Like they're cited everywhere. And so she was in a group and part of that study. So she mentioned how doing that changed her life. It changed her life, her work life. It changed her as a wife, as a parent. It changed everything about, it was fabulous, she said. So I looked at her and I said, okay, what are you doing here? Because a new teacher and you could teach me. And she said, oh, I stopped that. And so to me, that just spoke to the need we all have for support. In that I had a place, even though I was, I had a voice that needed to be heard by that person in that moment to help her because she wanted to re-engage. So, I've had that experience myself, but to have someone else tell me that is something that keeps me, the imposter syndrome, the inner critic, like, well, I'm not John Kabat-Zinn, or I'm not Marianne Williamson. Why would I do spiritual coaching or any of that? Is like your voice needs to be heard by someone.
And that's the whole theme of this show and why we bring so many different people on, because everybody has a voice that needs to be heard. Everybody has a message. And even though we are often saying the same thing, you're going to say it differently than how I'm going to say it, than how Graciela is going to say it. And the way you're going to say it is going to be the exact right way that someone else needs to hear it. So that's such a beautiful message.
Right, because the message takes two, right? So it takes you bringing the message in a particular way, right? That's going to resonate, but then me being ready to receive the message in that time, right? What I can hear today, I could not hear in my 20s, and I could not hear when I was in grade school. So it's such, they say this about getting pregnant, right? Like there's such it's so tiny little possibility of all of these things coming together all at the same time. But I think it's so powerful when these messages hit, and that how they say, like, blew my mind, right? Like,
yeah,
what things, and I think about this type of thing a lot, right? Like 14 generations of ancestors had to come before you in a particular order, in a particular way, and live their lives in a particular way to give you the life that you have today, for you to come, be here, say a message that's going to hit somebody in exactly the same way that they need to hear it. Like, mind blown, right?
So true. Yeah.
I got to pull my mind together after that.
Me too. Yeah.
I only said half the equation,
Oh, Paula, will you please share with us one thing you've done in your life that you will never regret?
going to Egypt. No.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. That's where I met Julietta, was in Egypt. And I am surprised that this came up when I was contemplating this, but I do not regret leaving my career. And that was the hardest thing I ever did, because I defined myself by that. And it was a privilege to be able to do that when my kids were little, and I struggled. I went back as a consultant, and a couple of places, and I would step my foot back in and out. But to allow the space for me to unfold as a human being instead of a human doing. And I can't say I was a human being. I was doing, type A stuff in the community and with kids and, but it led me to just continually reflect. I didn't know I was saying, I was saying, what the F am I supposed to do? But it was more, really under it is, what's my place in this world going forward?
All right.
And so to allow that to unfold is not particularly comfortable, but I am from where I sit right now, and I'm still doing it, because I'm taking this coaching in a new direction, and, trying to help others that are in transition and their kids have left, and, who the heck am I? So it's not a comfortable place, but it's worthwhile.
That's beautiful. It reminds me of that. I think it's a Mark Twain quote that says, "You will only regret the things you did not do."
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we're going to wrap it up, because I've so enjoyed this. Our questions are put together to empower others, but also to inspire them. And in the midst of all the things that we've talked about, divorce and jobs and big transitions and things like that, there's always some super sweet, delicious memory that kind of just hangs out in your mind. And you can always refer to it when you need that little pick me up. So I would love to build this great big bank of delicious memories. And so would you please add to our bank and tell us, what is your sweetest, most delicious memory?
I will happily add to your bank. What a beautiful bank, better than a monetary bank. So I have this image, and it came to me this weekend. I was up in Vermont, and we did a little hike, a group of women. It was a goddess weekend up there, kind of fun. And when I was still single, working in my, finance career, I joined a ski club in New Hampshire, and I went on this class every weekend. It was called Mountain Class. And there were a group of us, say 8 to 10 of us, that collected ourselves every Sunday morning and spent 3 hours skiing. So, to me, I'm not sure I think it's significant to saying yes when it's not easy. So it's not easy to get your butt up there every Friday night if you worked 60 hours this week or whatever. But, it provided a lot of richness to my life. But I have this image of one Sunday morning going down the backside of Mount Cranmore, which you haven't heard of because it ain't a big mountain. Going down and just feeling that sense of strength and of floating and looking up at the spaciousness of the sky, not a cloud in that blue sky, and having that sense of just, boy, am I glad I'm doing this. And so taking that as an anchor to kind of saying yes when it's not always easy. Even if you want to say yes, it's not always easy.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for asking.
I think, Mother, being out in nature like that just has that power to make things greater than things that we experience inside buildings and contained. And the things that come up for me in that question too are moments outdoors. So thank you, Goddess Earth, for having that power over us. All right. Well, Paula, thank you so much for joining us. And I love seeing you too, because it also brings back the Egyptian energy and memories and how amazing that trip was that we took together. And grateful for that I got to meet you there as well. And thank you for what you've had to share for our audience. Lots of wonderful nuggets of knowledge there for people to soak up. So
thank you so much. What a pleasure.
I can't thank both of you enough. And yeah, truly my pleasure to meet you and to see you, Juliet. A big hug. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, dear ones, for joining us today. Make sure you check out the show notes for details on how to get in touch with either Julieta, Graciela, or today's special guest. Don't forget to subscribe, review, like, and share. Big love and gratitude for all of you. May the path before you be ever illuminated by your fellow goddesses. Shine bright and have a magical day.